Welcome back to the Investor's Guide to Joy. Today is one of my favorite episodes, mainly because of the topic. Why is that? Because we're talking about legal and business structures and entities and all that craziness. So before I lose you as a listener, there's an imperative piece that I believe is within the mindset and perspective of using lawyers, being familiar with the law and contracts for how you also treat people. I've had several situations where I've had people not review agreements and then have them be biting the ass and realize that the way they could have simply avoided that, in my opinion, would then be to have a legal individual review it beforehand. But their mindset was around this idea of, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, this just has to get done, it has to get pushed forward. That mindset is on the idea of pushing, it's forcing, square peg, round hole. It is not to say take a step back, right? It's also not to say that you're taking the opportunity to be calm and patient and flow with how things come to you, right? That's been a big piece of what I've uncovered over the past decade, is having things come to me as opposed to forcing things and making them happen. It's kind of my old sales mentality. I've even had a recent experience of a friend who did not review an agreement, who should have, and was currently paying like the legal sort of penalties for that, and trying to get out of it from a conversation standpoint when it's really a legal matter now, right? And so having this mindset, I believe, not only helps you have better, awareness and agreements, from a legal standpoint, but it also creates more openness to how things flow in and through you. The last thing that I'll say really about, this law contract sort of piece is also the humans that you interact with. I've legitimately had situations in my life where through an opportunity to take equity in a company, said, great, I'll be, back with you in about a week to have my law team review this. And that sparked up some controversy. That then brings complete red flag to say, who am I working with that they don't want additional eyes and specifically legal counsel around the agreement that we're going to take place, right? Here we are about to get into bed with each other with a business entity, and yet I'm off put from wanting to do what's best for me to protect my best interests. Now, that's an extreme example, but the last thing I'll say on this is it also brings a level of surety and professionalism to conversations when you have this. This is an expected piece of process. So be sure that not only you understand what you're doing and how you're doing it, have the right mindset and the openness for it. And lastly, that you have the right ability to take action on it, working with the best people who are open to the best result. So for today's episode, we're going to go through a lot of legal pieces and information, which will be super beneficial, and the mindset related to it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Investor's Guide to Joy. My name is Paul Graham, and I'm with Matthew Fornaro. Excited to have him on today as a lawyer, specifically within businesses, to help really give insight into how people are thinking, how he approach businesses and the entire market. So Matthew, thanks for being on today.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Yeah, you bet. So I was briefly chatting with you this before we hit record, and it's the idea of like, at least people in my circles or, where I live in Austin, Texas, like seems like everyone and their mom's like, buying a business. You mentioned that you necessarily haven't seen a kind of huge influx or, big change essentially with people, acquiring businesses or sort of changing hands. And you work with all industries and all sort of stages of businesses. What have you really found as you've talked to different business owners at different stages? Like, do they have different like words they're using or like beliefs in themselves or perspectives? I'm curious to see if you've kind of just seen like, imagine like, a child or even like a puppy, right? You mentioned you just got a new puppy. Like, do you see them grow a lot, or do they kind of like, stay the same, especially as they interact with you as a, lawyer?
Well, Paul, I see all different businesses do all different things, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
So I see some businesses who've plateaued, who that's where they want to be, and they don't want to get any bigger and they don't want to get any more complicated. So that's where they are. I see other businesses who want to get bigger for the purpose of selling themselves or for bringing in more investors. And then I see other businesses at the same time that want to downsize to either move on to something else or to also sell or get rid of the business. So I see it all.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I've been in realms of, the startup world. Previous co-founder, raised funds, things like that. And I've always been an advocate of like, let's bring in lawyer, like kind of beforehand kind of prep of sorts, right? I've really found over my just experience, even now today, like raising funds, that it is in some ways just a mindset piece, right? It's almost like people buying insurance. They're like, well, we like need it, but like maybe let's like wait, right? So what have you found like the best, people who are like starting a company, from scratch do? Do they get validation from a bunch of customers and then, come to you kind of form, operating agreements or things like that? What would you recommend that you've seen people do like the most successfully?
Well, what I would recommend to do and what I like to see is before you literally do anything, come see your attorney and then also come see your other professionals, come see your accountant, come see your banker, come see, if you're into web stuff, go see your web person before you start anything. That way, your entire flow of your business is set up correctly. So there's no issues that you have to go back and either correct or change while you're trying to grow your business and move your business forward. So that's my ideal where I'd like to see a business is before the inception of anything happens. Is that how it happens in the real world? No, I see some businesses before they do anything great. I can really help them out. We can really do a lot and get things off on the right track. Yeah. See other businesses who kind of do kind of what you were talking about, where they try to dip their toe in the water and see what's going on. And then they kind of get started. Then they go see an attorney. And then I have other people where they're full up in business, taking on investors, partners, raising money, selling stuff. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I need it. And then they come see me. And then not that it's a problem, but it would have been nice if I was there at the inception.
Sure. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of maybe like a shoelace or some piece of rope, like being tied a bunch, like untangling, some of those knots. And definitely as it gets more complex, just then requires, more attention for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What, as businesses grow and scale, is there like a frequency you found of like people needing to like interact with a lawyer? Because oftentimes, I've approached, hey, when I start a business, it's then, well, hey, I need a lawyer, right? Or, hey, if there is maybe an issue that I would, conduct with the lawyer, but not necessarily like a CPA where it's like annually or things like that. I would assume it, definitely changes as you get to say a $50 million business, right? There's more problems to be had, more, legal compliance, things like that. But is there even just like a simple like touch point cadence you would recommend of say, I don't know, like a sub $2 million business to like just keep in touch with you? Or what does that kind of like process or timeline look like?
Yeah, ideally, just like you pointed out, you want to keep in touch with your accountant, whether on a regular basis, not just the taxes, but to see what's going on. I would prefer you do the same thing with an attorney, but sometimes people don't do it. And that's where they just go from fire to fire, problem to problem. That's the only time they contact their attorney. Yeah. You really should contact your attorney on a regular basis, just as a preventative measure and as a growth tool, because no matter what happens, whether you think something's insignificant or not really consequential or whatever, it could be. And that's why you want to check in with your attorney every once in a while and say, look, I entered into all these contracts. Well, ideally, you would want your attorney to review them before you.
Yeah, sure.
Or I took out a loan. Well, ideally, you want your attorney to review the loan paperwork before you take it out. So before you make any business decisions would be a great time to be in touch, but you should regularly be in touch anyways, just to tell your attorney what's going on, what you have on the horizon.
Yeah, you bet. Have you found, like, this has been like my belief as I've, interacted with different lawyers over the years in the startup realm, or, when I was in commercial real estate, or even, these days raising funds, that lawyers just have like a vast network of people, that they work with. And so, what have you found in terms of your own networking and kind of just exposure to the people, you've connected with? Because you're involved in like a lot of different groups that you've had, that it seems as though you have just like such a vast network to even help companies as well. So my thinking is not just only reaching out to say, hey, like, can you look at this contract? But hey, by chance, do you know someone in this area or something like that? Like, have you, experienced that, or what are your thoughts on that, concept of, you helping network and work with the company who's, using your services.
Yeah, it's definitely something I help my clients do. I mean, obviously, as a business law attorney, I come into contact with obviously lots of businesses, and then I come into contact with lots of people who deal with businesses. So if you come to me, for instance, and we're at the absolute inception of your company or your business organization or your venture, and we haven't done anything, I have like a cadre of people who I can recommend to you, or you can use your own people, whatever you want. But I have like a network of accountants, I have a network of bankers, I have a network of insurance people who I can recommend for you to reach out to go with, whether you're starting your business or whether you're in business. And I work with them, or whoever you want to bring in. You want to bring in your own accountant, you want to bring in your own insurance, that's fine. I'll work them as part of a team to kind of protect your business and make sure that your business is a success going forward.
Yeah, certainly. One thought that came up with, again, just like my experience of, people buying a bunch of businesses, now in circles I'm in, is, are there types of industries or even just types of businesses that you would recommend to, stay away from, or like are extremely challenging? Maybe lawn care, like, looks really great when you look at the, P&L, but the, issues that arise with it just radically transform, that profitability.
Yeah, obviously everyone goes into business to make money. They don't want to go into fail. And every time someone wants to acquire a business, it's because they see value there and they want it to go forward. Generally speaking, any business could be volatile. So my main recommendation is do your due diligence. I mean, thoroughly review that business inside and out, because you can have, the most inane, simple business blow up in your face, or you can have a highly complex business that you've done all your due diligence on succeed. So, my advice is do your due diligence on whatever business it is you acquire. With that being said, are there businesses that you can acquire that are more problematic than others? The answer is yes. Businesses that require heavy regulation and licenses are much harder to do than just, I bought an ice cream store or something like that. No offense to ice cream stores, but it's a lot easier to do that than it is to say, acquire a business that has, stock, that has membership certificates if it's an LLC, that has licenses that are tied to it, particularly alcohol licenses and liquor licenses. No matter where you are in the country, definitely. Alcohol licenses are always a major issue, because they're, each little fiefdom sets up their own rules where they try to regulate and limit the way that alcohol licenses or liquor licenses can be transferred. And that's why when I get involved in deals like that, I actually bring in an expert for the liquor license portion, because it's so complex. I don't even try to go near it because it's so intricate and so complicated, here in Florida, other states, that's something where, I won't even go near it without another expert on board. So same thing with like, if you want to acquire like a blockchain business or something where there's financial regulations, same exact thing, heavy financial regulations, you're going to have a lot of red tape to go through. Or, something that's emerging like a cannabis industry, that's probably the most issue riddled thing you could possibly do, is try to get into the cannabis industry, because federally it's not allowed. Each state has its own regulation, and if you're coming from one state to another, you got to know exactly what you're doing or you're going to get killed. So, my advice is always do your due diligence, and the more regulated the businesses you're trying to buy, the more complicated the acquisition is going to be.
How do you know you've done enough due diligence?
When you're at the point where your accountant, your attorney, your lender, your partners, your investors don't have any more relevant questions, is probably the point where you've done the due diligence and you've got all the answers you needed. I mean, you can never truly do enough due diligence, but you can definitely not do enough. So I would say once everyone's satisfied and has all the answers they need, that's probably the point where you've done the due diligence that you need to do.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier in terms of like lender. So at least from like the real estate, side of things, I've never thought about my lawyer getting involved with like a lender. So a curiosity question is like your comment on like lender lawyer, like relationships or insight. Is that more for like SBA and kind of business loans, or is that also for, real estate loan docs as well?
That's for all kinds of loans. I mean, particularly the SBA is another highly regulated thing where, it's much better to have attorney's set of eyes on it than not to have on it. But the same thing with real estate acquisition. It's always better to have your attorney on board because, you're going to get a pile of documents that you're going to have to agree to sign and be entered into and be bound by for possibly the rest of your life. So if you're going to make that kind of commitment, I recommend having an attorney help you review those documents because there's some things in there that may be innocuous, but then there's some things in there that you can negotiate that you may not be able to negotiate if you didn't have an attorney help you. And there's some things where you can try to, get rid of provisions and things like that. So definitely always have an attorney if possible. Look at that stuff before you enter into it because it could be a lifetime commitment for you. And if you enter into a bad contract, you're stuck.
Is that also possible, think of single family investment space as well?
Same thing. I mean, any contract can turn out to be a bad contract if you don't review the terms and you're not comfortable with the terms, or if there's some wacky terms in there.
Yeah. I mean, is there, hold on. So, but single family properties, right? Loans on them. My guess is because they've been executed, certainly it would fall in the lines of what the contract says of if it can be revisited or whatnot. But to the person who's out there thinking this, because I'm also thinking this, can you revisit contracts that are signed with loans? Again, kind of, single family residential space, or is that maybe more like business loans that are banks? So you go back to the bank and say, hey, we want to revisit terms. What, I guess, renegotiation is there once some of these documents have been signed, or even is there any opportunity?
It's hard to say. It's absolutely subjective because it's on a case by case basis. I mean, most of those contracts, by the time you sign it, if you negotiated it or whatever, those contracts are essentially take it or leave it contracts at that point.
Yeah, sure.
So there's not a lot that you can retroactively do to try to switch the terms or add or do things. But obviously, if you go to refinance or you go to take out a on the single family, like a HELOC or something like that, then there's probably room for you to renegotiate the original contract to change the terms since you're modifying it. But other than that, I mean, once you're in, you're in. So it's better to, negotiate it beforehand than it is to try to negotiate it afterwards.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's always interesting to see what's possible. But yeah, that's a good point to definitely have eyes on it. And it's definitely a proactive approach, although I've seen most that don't want to, kind of pay the lawyer fee to have them look at a document because they, think it's fine or should be fine or things like that. I've really found that from a mindset perspective, ego has played a lot into my life at times, of which I've not then, sent things to attorneys, of which over the past couple of years, it's been the exact opposite. So my question is just how would you coach or consult or even give advice to someone who thinks that they, shouldn't use an attorney, or, oh, it's just this one document, it'll be fine type thing, because they're inhibiting the action. They're not even taking the action of, reaching out to you, for example.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be too proud. Don't let your pride get in the way of good business judgment. So just because it's one document or one contract or one set of contracts doesn't mean that there could be some kind of peril involved with it down the road. So my advice would be, if you're in business not as a hobby. You're in business, professionally. You're in business to make money. You're in business to succeed. As part of that, you have to have in your mindset that you have to have a group of people who need or are there to help you succeed. And part of that group is your attorney. You gotta go to that group anytime you make any major decisions or whatever, to make sure that it's in the best interest of your business, whether you like it or not. And that's, that would be my advice to any client, is to use your team of people. Don't be too proud. Go ask questions and, you'll get the answers and you'll probably get a better product out of it.
Yeah, certainly. But better product for sure, because you have, more eyes, different experiences, things like that. And, one good thing you said, earlier is then just the experience of it. You wouldn't know otherwise because, it's someone's specialty. So it's important to have that, sharing between. What would you say is one piece of advice that you think every business owner should know?
One piece of advice every business owner should know is to believe in yourself. And with that, jobs come and go, businesses come and go, whatever, but you are always there. So you need to believe in yourself, and you need to make that belief like your mantra on how you go forward. As far as doing that, that's part of the process of having, like a group of professionals who help you, not being afraid to ask for help and just focusing on a goal and going for it.
Yeah. How have you seen that like in yourself of like believing in yourself, for your own law practice?
Yeah, I used to work for two large AmLaw 200 law firms, and I used to, they had hundreds of attorneys, and I had the opportunity almost 10 years ago now to either go to one of the 10 largest law firms in the world or do something different. So I thought about it, went over it with my wife and my family and decided to do something different. I started my own law practice. And, was that crazy? Was that not the best business move? History will determine that. All right. But when I made that choice, I have to stick with that choice unless there's some kind of outside disaster or something. And I need to make sure that I follow up with that choice and I do the best I can to make that choice a reality, to prosper. And that's why, the things that I tell my clients to do, I've done myself. And, I've learned all about businesses over the last 10 years. I've done, supplemental education and all this other stuff about business to understand theory and business practice and business execution. So, I believed in myself. I put together a plan. I follow that plan. I have people who I'm accountable to, even though I'm the boss, but I still have people who I'm accountable to make sure that hold me to doing what I need to do and stuff like that. So my advice would be, the same thing I just said before, believe in yourself, but make sure, you have a plan and make sure you do the best you possibly can do to execute that plan and have a team, even if you're by yourself, have an outside team that can help you succeed on that plan. That way your business success or failure is determined by the business. It's not determined by you on a technicality. So either your business succeeds or fails because it was meant to be or not meant to be. It's not because you didn't fill out a form, or it's not because you file your taxes. It's because the business just didn't work. So that's the kind of position you want to be put in as a business owner, is that you eliminate all the nuances and all the other excuses and stuff. And it's just, does the business work or not? And that's, ideally what I would say I employed in myself to, form my own firm. And that's what I tell my clients.
Yeah, you bet. So there's definitely great insight in terms of like, what support for your business looks like in terms of like a service standpoint, right? Have the lawyer, the accountant, et cetera. What have you seen or even like recommend even, for yourself personally in terms of support that's emotionally, right? Yeah, I don't want to lead you with this, but I believe it's important to have that kind of like emotional support of people around you beyond just that, again, kind of like service support.
Yeah, obviously it's important if you have family to have your family support, which is, luckily I have my wife and my parents who support me. But professionally, like I was just talking about, where I have people I'm accountable to, I have, like, for lack of a better term, a business coach that I'm accountable to, that we, set up plans and things that we have to execute and go through, and I have to do it, and I have to make sure I'm compliant with it and stuff like that. And my business coach, gives me feedback and obviously is a sounding board and supports me as far as the machinations that go on with having a business. So I would recommend anyone in business to have, and you can call it a business coach, you can call it a business advisor, you can call it whatever you want. Mine's slightly different because he's more of a facilitator than more of like an advisor kind of person. But, I would recommend having that too, as far as having your support process, is having an outside network where you just don't rely on your family. Although if you have your family, it's great to rely on them as a sounding board, but have like a, either a business coach, a business advisor or something, or if not, have like another business owner or a peer or something you can interact with or sound off of or get ideas from.
Yeah, certainly. When, I guess, would you recommend having a facilitator instead of advisor, or maybe like both? Is it different stages? Is it, maybe different income levels? Like what have you maybe like seen or experienced?
Yeah, it's obviously, with all the professionals you have on board, that would be great to have your business advisor or whatever you want to call them on board. You have to budget for that. You have to have enough cash flow for that. You have to have enough, credit for that. And the issue is obviously you have to have all these people on board. You have to have a plan. You have to have all this stuff. So in the hierarchy of getting things, the business advisor is very important, but it has to come after the core people for your business. So I would say as soon as you're able to satisfy, making sure your core people are paid, which is, your internal employees, everything like that, then your accountant, your banker, your web host, your insurance people, whatever, I would then make sure I have the business advisor on board, because that's an independent person who's there to help you succeed in your business. And it's a luxury, but it's also a necessity at the same time if you're serious about your business.
Yeah, certainly. Is there a recommended range of revenue or something of the sort that you've seen in, your own practice as well as like other businesses that they allocate towards, business coach or continuous improvement, which would especially help someone, if they're acquiring a business, not just, hey, here's net profit based on, these different inputs, but saying, hey, we should allocate again, maybe some like percentage or range of percentage.
I wouldn't say necessarily there's a hard number. I would just say once you get going a little bit and you have your, stable, I would say that's the point you want to get your business manager in, that point or earlier if possible. But that's definitely the point where you want to get your advisor in, is at that point where you're stable and you're going forward and now it's time to grow and do things. If you can do it beforehand, that's great. Do it beforehand, but you definitely need it at that point.
Yeah, certainly. Going back to, working with different professionals and what have you, how do attorneys work specifically with, accountants or financial planners or, the alike?
Yeah, some of the stuff we do as professionals overlaps with each other, and some of the stuff doesn't and is necessarily, just us doing it, whatever. What I do when I interact with the professionals for my clients is, first of all, I always defer. When I'm working with an accountant, I defer to the accountant's judgment. So if we're setting up a business organization, we're at the very beginning of a business, I defer to what the accountant says to do, because it's a lot easier to do things from a financial standpoint from the beginning than it is to fix legal things from a legal standpoint after it's already started. So for instance, you may be independently wealthy, or you may have like a family trust or something where having a corporation or an S corporation wouldn't really make tax sense for you, but having an LLC would. So that's something I defer to an accountant on, where I'm not going to go near that. I just want the accountant to tell me what business organization suits your individual financial needs best, and then we'll build out from there. Some attorneys don't do that, and they just say form an LLC or form an S corp. And then once they bring the accountant on board, then all of a sudden you're going to get killed with taxes the next year, because instead of structuring things a certain way, the wrong way, and now to go back and fix that from a legal standpoint, it's a lot harder than it is to just start it from a tax standpoint at the beginning and make sure it's done correctly. So that's how I interact with an accountant.
Yeah.
And then the other professionals, the same thing. If someone's taking out a loan or whatever, and they want me to get with their banker and look at the documents and everything, I try to make sure that the terms are the best for the client, and try to, make sure the rate's the best, try to make sure, if you can get rid of a personal guarantee and not have it, that'd be great. SBA compliance, things like that. So it's a lot of give and take working with the other professionals. A lot of attorneys, we were talking about the ego and the thing of the business owner. A lot of professionals have that ego where they think they're the best at whatever they're doing for their client. I don't. I defer to the other people to do their other people's stuff, and then I come in and we figure out how to make the other people's stuff work from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, certainly. It helps me form this question to then say, what question would you ask a lawyer to find the best lawyer? It seems as though, qualities and traits of, being humble, being aware, certainly being, competent in the line of work certainly come to mind initially. What other, characteristics or questions would you recommend people ask to find the best lawyer, not just a lawyer, right? Because again, to your point, they could just, push paper, hey, I want an LLC, but, they may not be in the best interest of the entire, business.
Yeah. It's, finding an attorney, just like finding any professional, is, I may like you, you may not like me, or, another guy may not like you, but I like, it's the same thing. So as much as you want it to be an objective qualification based relationship. A lot of it's personality based, and a lot of it's, do you get along with someone? Is it easy to talk to and communicate? Can you effectively do things with them? So my advice when you're seeking out like a business law attorney is, first of all, the best way is to get a referral from someone who's trusted, who you can trust, whether it's a family member or whatever. But make sure they're a business. If you want a business law attorney, make sure they're referring you a business law attorney, not like an attorney who kind of dabbles in whatever. Ask someone you trust for a referral. Ask your accountant, ask your banker, ask your mom, your dad, whatever. And then once you get that referral, have a consultation with the attorney and just go over, what your ideas are or what's going on or whatever, and see if it's a good fit. And if it is, then, you can ask more questions and proceed forward. Or if it's not a good fit, just ask for another referral from someone and, do whatever. You don't have to necessarily rely on someone's, SEO or someone's Google rating to see if you're going to use them. Referrals are proven to be the best form of acquiring new business and also acquiring new professionals, because they've already been vetted by someone you trust if you get it from someone you trust. So it's usually leads to the best results. But also make sure when you talk with your attorney and you want to talk, is it a good fit for my business? Make sure that they understand business, because in a vacuum, I may understand how to set up an LLC. I may understand how to set up a corporation. I may understand how to negotiate your contracts, but I may have no idea of what it takes for you to get commercial insurance, or I may have no idea what it takes to have employees and, you file a 1020 with the IRS and you have employees with W-2s. So make sure that your business law attorney actually understands the mechanics of business, because it's a much better relationship.
Is there a way to understand their level of just tense around business? Like, are you thinking more that they themselves have a business, right? Certainly they have that experience, but are you also thinking they have like strategic business sense, or it's more like the kind of tactical operations sort of points that you were just mentioning?
It's maybe a little bit of both tactical. What I try to do is I try to bring my skills to my client so that they can make the best business decision possible for their business. I don't want to make an ultimate business decision for my client, because that's up to them. They're running the business. I want to give them as much information or tools as possible for them to be in the position where they can make a smart, intelligent, well thought out, fact-based, law-based business decision. I'm not going to make that decision for them. They are. So I would recommend, when you're looking for an attorney, you want an attorney who gives you all the information, who does the work for you to put you in the best position, and you have the best knowledge, you have the best tools behind you and everything for you to ultimately just be able to make a business decision and not have to worry about legalities or anything else, so that ultimately it's your call.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Great perspective on those points, because oftentimes I've seen how some or several of those points have been, lost in translation. And especially if you're starting up a company or something, comes in terms of need, it's then, kind of taking the first dance of first person available, essentially. So great reminders. So this is the Investor's Guide to Joy. So in the guide, like, what is one thing that you would leave in terms of, mindset, mantra, perspective, motto, what have you, that you would leave?
I talked about earlier, you got to believe in yourself ultimately, and make sure you put yourself in the best position to make the best decisions, so that you either fail or succeed on the merits and not on technicalities.
Yeah, certainly. Do you have like a recommendation on how to believe in yourself more? I mean, something comes to mind for me, but I'm just curious what comes to mind for you.
You can read any number of hundreds of books out there as far as, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, all that stuff is all there. If you need to get put into that mindset, there's no one particular one I have. Maybe Dale Carnegie would be the best one, say, like any one of his books, because they're old school. I mean, they're old school, man. They're like 100 years old.
Yeah.
And they still hold true today. So like Dale Carnegie books, or whatever you find that puts you in the mindset to, believe in yourself and to go forward. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, certainly. At least for myself, I found that it's the, small promises that I make, to myself that I keep, of which build, confidence. Then that confidence with my ability and with competence, then allows for the potential of belief. And then it's just that continuous cycle of then doing the things that I said I was going to do with the intention of, that kind of outcome, and kind of just walking that path. How you walk, a mile is by, 1 foot in front of the other type thing, and believe that you'll get there regardless of what's to come. And I also wrote a blog post about this, about a fish climbs a tree, to say that they, have utter belief that it'll, happen, and they have the tools, resources, skills, and knowledge to make it happen. So very much resonate and agree with what you're saying. And I mean, it's a process. It's not just, hey, I have the belief, and then I sit here at my desk and just think it's going to, come to me, right? Business is made and created, right? So people taking action and having that come to be and come into existence, if you will, not just thinking about it, essentially.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah. Great. Well, appreciate you coming on, sharing your insight. Very helpful for me for where I'm at and where I'm going, and some good reminders as well along the way for, having an attorney that, to your point, is just kind of well-rounded in all aspects and of business, not just someone to kind of review as well. So thanks for coming on, sharing your insights.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. If something resonated with you today, share it with a friend. And if you enjoyed today's podcast, leave a 5-star review. It's one of the best ways that I can know what and how I'm doing is being beneficial to you and your life as a listener. Thanks for joining. We'll see you on next episode.